I'll just wait for the...
Members, the House is in committee for further consideration of the Appropriations 2025-26 Estimates Bill. The Business Committee has determined to organise the debate by portfolio, so there will be no sector-specific debates. All votes are available for debate, but only specific ministers will be available each day to speak to the indicated portfolio. The Government has indicated that the Minister of Social Development and Employment, the Minister of Education, the Minister of Health, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Māori Development will be available today. Each debate will be led by a call from the chairperson or member of the committee that consider the estimates most closely related to the minister's portfolios. And leading off the debate, the chairperson should take care not to be overly political and should ensure their call gives a fair reflection of the committee's report on the votes relevant to the portfolio. The debate expires after 11 hours, at which point questions will be put that the votes stand part of the schedules and on the provisions of the Appropriation 2025-26 Estimates Bill. There are now 5 hours 51 minutes remaining in this debate. New Zealand National has 1 hour 48 minutes remaining. New Zealand Labour has 1 hour 45 minutes remaining. The Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand has 44 minutes remaining. ACT New Zealand has 54 minutes remaining. New Zealand First has 38 minutes remaining. Te Pāti Māori has 23 minutes remaining. The estimates debate should be relevant to the Government's current spending plans contained in the estimates of appropriation. A compendium of the reports of select committees on the votes is available on the table. The question again is that the votes contained in the estimates of appropriation for 2025-26 stand part.
Mr. Chair.
Members, we start with the Minister of Social Development and Employment. The Minister is available to speak to that portfolio from 4:16 to 5:16. Joseph Mooney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I rise to speak on the beginning of this estimates debate on social development and employment as the chairperson of the Social Services and Community Select Committee. Mr. Speaker, Vote Social Development is the largest vote in Budget 2025. The vote funds many social services, including income support, student loans, emergency housing and support, and disability support. In 2025-26, the appropriation sought for Vote Social Development total $45.33 billion. That's over $45 billion. The appropriations in Vote Social Development come under 7 ministerial portfolios. The Ministry of Social Development administers the vote. The Minister for Social Development and Employment is responsible for 94.6% of the vote, with appropriations totalling $42.829 billion, including benefits or related expenses. 5 other ministers have responsibilities for appropriations of the vote: the Minister for Revenue, Minister for Housing, Minister for Veterans, Minister for Youth, and the Minister for Seniors. As part of our consideration of the Vote Social Development, our committee, Mr. Chair, held hearings with the Minister for Social Development and Employment, the Honourable Louise Upston, the Minister for Youth, the Honourable James Meagher, the Minister for Seniors, the Honourable Casey Costello, the Associate Minister of Housing, the Honourable Tama Potaka, and the Associate Minister for Social Development and Employment, Honourable Penny Simmons. This is obviously an incredibly important vote for the people of New Zealand, a very significant part of government expenditure, and it is good to have a debate about this estimates here in the House today. With that, I will conclude my contribution.
Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Louise Upston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I said in the estimates hearing in June, my highest priority is supporting more New Zealanders into employment, while at the same time ensuring that those who do need support are able to draw on state support when they need it. I'm committed, of course, to the Government's target of reducing the number of people on the job seekers benefit by 50,000 by 2030. Our Government is focused on supporting people on welfare into employment and therefore providing them with the opportunities that work provides. Because the faster we can help beneficiaries find sustainable employment, the better outcomes they have for themselves, their families, and also our communities, and also importantly our economy. It's part of the Government's commitment to boost growth, and with a key emphasis on maximising the potential of New Zealanders and developing the talent of our people. I'm conscious we've only got a short time, so I'll provide some brief opening statements before going to questions. Through Budget 2025, Vote Social Development received funding in key areas that align with our priorities, while also reducing expenditure and delivering services more efficiently. If I look for a moment at the focus, clearly, of reducing the number of people on job seeker support by 50,000 to 140,000 by 2030. We've also confirmed the multi-year transformation program, which is called MSD Services for the Future. It's about improving services to New Zealanders who need assistance. Some of the key investments are as follows: 490 frontline staff and employment programs to help get more people into work, adding a parental assistance test to determine eligibility for job seeker support and emergency benefit for 18 and 19-year-olds, updating automated decision-making using use in MSD's processes, improving both the accuracy and integrity of MSD payments, and also changes to the Accommodation Supplement. We've improved redress for survivors of abuse in state care, including increased payments. Other key areas include the continuation of supporting national and regional food distribution infrastructure and community food provision, and we've continued the important funding for Kickstart breakfast programs and Kids Can jackets for 2 years. I want to talk briefly about the employment investment strategy, which will run through to 2028. The strategy guides decision-making about which clients to allocate to employment support and which programs to invest in based on people's employment support needs, evidence of what works and their distance from the labour market, as well as value for money. It supports MSD to be more targeted and efficient with the investment to help achieve our priorities for employment. The strategy will support MSD's frontline to shift investment through allocation of clients to case management and employment interventions under the improved Employment and Social Outcomes Support multi-category appropriation. As expected in the current economic climate, the overall number of people receiving a benefit has increased, ahead of a forecast decrease from December this year. However, our focus on employment and proactive staff engagement is helping more people to move into work. We've seen more than 80,700 people moved off welfare and into work in the last financial year, despite these challenging times. There is, of course, more work to do, and we'll continue to help people overcome the challenges to prepare for and find a job. Thank you, Mr Chair. I'm happy to take questions.
The Honourable Willie Jackson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, one of the major problems we've got in the country at the moment and have had for some years is the problem around Māori and Māori unemployment. That is, when we were in government, was running at nearly 3 times what the average rate was. We were able to bring that down. This government has still got it at just over double what the general rate is. And it's very concerning. So I would like to know from the Minister, what's the plan in terms of Māori unemployment? Is there going to be a focus on some of the targeted programs that the previous government brought to the table? Obviously, Mana and Mahi was one of those major programs. Māori trade training, Mr. Speaker or Mr. Chair, was a major investment from the previous government. Does she consider reinvesting into boosting Māori trade training, which delivered 63 Māori-led projects and supported over 4,000 Māori across Aotearoa? So just opening up with those questions in terms of what is the government's overall plan, because I never heard that in the Minister's introductory remarks in terms of Māori unemployment, boosting Māori in employment. Mr Chair.
Mr Chair.
The Honourable Louise Upston.
I thank the member for his question, and as we've discussed in this House before, unfortunately when we have a labour market the way it is, Māori are disproportionately affected. What I would say is what we're seeing in the numbers between 18 and 24 coming on to job seeker benefit. Actually, the number of Māori is coming on is less than we might have expected in terms of that proportionality, so that is positive. And the investment strategy with investment in initiatives like Mana and Mahi and Hei Potama Rangatahi are absolutely focused on young Māori and Pacifica. And I'll also add that Budget 25 will mean that every young person under the age of 25 on the job seeker benefit will be in case management.
Ricardo Menendez-March.
Mr. Chair, so first of all, just wanted to comment on the Minister's initial remarks. And I find it incredibly rich that she both talks about her focus being getting people into employment, while yet her own government is cutting thousands and thousands of jobs, intentionally so, despite not needing to do so. My question is related to the advice that Treasury gave her in relationship to the tightening of the eligibility for job seeker supports who are between the ages of 18 and 19. At the time that the budget initiatives were going through, Treasury actually said that this should actually be deferred to next year's budget because the savings would be highly uncertain, as there's little data on the number of young people who may be affected, and that this change would also have several perverse incentives as currently designed. What are these perverse incentives that Treasury warned her about? And does she agree with Treasury that the savings coming from this initiative would be highly uncertain? Because this is no small feat that we're talking about. This is about restricting access to some of our youngest, most affected at the moment by unemployment alongside Māori and Pacifica. We're talking about young people here who are struggling to get access to entry-level jobs. And so if the government is going to be making it harder at a time of high youth unemployment to access these benefits, I would like some answers in relationship to the advice that Treasury gave her in relationship to issues in relation to the savings, but also around the several perverse incentives that are created by this policy. Can she name them?
Mr. Chair.
Honourable Minister.
I'm pleased the member raised the 18 and 19 policy because it gives us the opportunity to talk about the intention behind it. And the intention, which I'm assuming members opposite would also expect, is that every 18 and 19-year-old in New Zealand is in further education, further training or in a job. And that going on welfare isn't the first option to them. So that's the intention of it. Treasury in many of the budget savings will say that the level of savings is uncertain. That is no different from this proposal. And what I will say is the member will need to wait only a little bit longer to hear the final policy settings of the 18 and 19-year-old policy.
Ricardo Menendez-March.
Much, Mr. Chair. Now, moving on to one of the savings that will start coming into in this budget, despite the announcement being made last year, but the legislation introduced was during the budget process, is in relationship to the tightening of access to accommodation supplement for people who may be receiving the income-related subsidy, who may have borders, for example, or who may be in private rentals. Does she agree with the advice that MSD gave her that this policy will leave people worse off on average by $100 each week? And does she also agree with the advice that showed that disabled, Māori, the young and the old will be disproportionately impacted by this policy? And what message does she have to old people, young people, disabled people and Māori who, as MSD has noted, will be disproportionately left worse off as a result of these changes?
Mr. Chair.
Honourable Minister.
As I've said previously when we debated this legislation, which is a Budget 24 measure, the changes to the border contribution are about making the system fair, transparent and equivalent. So if somebody is receiving income from a border, that will be counted in terms of the housing assistance that they are eligible for. So it is a simple step that is about making the system fairer. And I accept in this policy there will be some people who were receiving income from 1 and 2 borders that will now, it will be their housing supplement will be affected. We appreciate that, we accept that, but what we need to do is ensure we have a system that is fair and has integrity.
Ricardo Menendez-March.
So when she talks about fairness, does she think that it is fair that some of these people may be left in even deeper poverty and may be requiring additional assistance from work and income? And if so, does she think this undermines the supposed savings that she's trying to make through this initiative? Mr. Chair.
Helen White.
Mr. Chair, Following on from what the Minister has just said, does the Minister accept that the impact of our youth unemployment is much more extreme? And can she give the latest numbers for 18 to 20-year-olds unemployed and 20 to 25-year-olds unemployed? Can I also know from the Minister, is she concerned that such high youth unemployment will have long-term consequences on the mental health of those people who are unemployed at a time when they are forming their careers, their future careers? This is a critical time in their lives, and has she considered the impact on that, both economically and in terms of mental health? I'd also like to know from the Minister, she came into government at a time when Labor had the highest employment rates. That was something that we could be extremely proud of. How many more unemployed people are now requiring job seekers benefit today than when she took over in November 2023? And what does that cost the country? Because there have been promises made about reducing the number, but my understanding is we are 26,000 more on the lists than we were. That seems to me to be an extremely worrying statistic, but it also seems to be one that would come with enormous cost. And does she accept that those people that are on the job seekers benefit today are there because they are legitimately unemployed due to the downturn in our economy engineered by this government? And if that is the case, if she accepts that they are legitimately unemployed, and I see the Minister's expression, and I accept that she might not accept the second part of what I said, but she can actually answer the first part, which is, does she think that those people that are unemployed now are there because of their own fault, or is it through no fault of their own, given that she accepts there's been a downturn? In which case, why has she moved into a mode of penalising those people? And what I want to know for those people today who face really high costs of things like butter and the cost of registering a car and the cost of energy, what are they actually receiving from this government if they're on the job seekers benefit? Because I don't think a lot of New Zealanders know just what that looks like for the average person. What do they get? And has it been inflation adjusted for those very things that I said? Energy, for the cost of food, and for the cost of things like car registration. Have they had more as those costs have gone up? Is that part of the equation? And actually, has there been an inquiry made as to whether they can actually live on what they're on? Can they make ends meet? I've got more questions for the Minister, but I thank her for an answer for these first.
Mr Chair.
The Honourable Minister.
I'm not going to go into an economics class about how the economic recession got created. I think most people know that, and it's been debated in this House. I'm more than happy to answer the question, but I'm also going to refute outrageous statements that were made by the member prior. So the current, as of the end of June, there were 48,200 people on the job seeker benefit between the age of 18 to 24, which of course is an increase from the previous year. That is why because we are concerned about their future opportunities, and what we saw under the last 6 years was an increase in the number of years that age bracket would be on benefit throughout their lifetime, 18 years, which we are totally unwilling to accept. That's why, as I said, Budget 25 and the Employment Investment Strategy means that every one of those young people will be in case management. That is the most successful program. That's why we are investing in it to improve their opportunities of being in employment. And while it is challenging at the moment, we want to ensure young people are using this time to prepare for and get ready as the economy grows again.
The Honourable Ginny Anderson.
Mr Chair, I have a series of questions all in and around the youth figures. So recent statistics out yesterday from Stats NZ have there's 19,000 plus fewer jobs filled by 15 to 24-year-olds. What I'd like to know from the Minister is that what plan does she have, or what solution is she offering for those young people who might go through a training course or receive some extra support, but there's no job to go to? So in that space, what solutions does she offer particularly those that are in that 18 to 19-year-old bracket, which aren't impacted yet but soon will be by no longer being able to receive the job seeker benefit. What specific solutions are in place for young people who have gone through training but have no place for work?
Mr Chair.
Honourable Minister.
So, as I said, that age bracket is a concern because we know their lifetime years on benefit has been increasing, and we want to pull that back. 18 and 19-year-olds, we want them to be in further education, training or in employment. And we know that as the economy grows, it creates more jobs. The level of investment in infrastructure projects, for example, 240,000 new jobs expected. These next few months are challenging. The 18 and 19-year-old policy doesn't come in until the 1st of July 2027. That's what we announced in the budget. But I just would remind the House, and it's what most people will expect, is that 18 and 19-year-olds will be the responsibility of their family first, as opposed to just this idea that the best life is to go straight on welfare. So we'd be encouraging them to go into further education or further training. Mr Chair, I neglected to answer the question of the previous member about increases to welfare payments because of inflation. They are annually adjusted with CPI.
Honourable Ginny Anderson.
I'll reframe it again for the Minister because I listened very carefully and I did not hear the answer to my question, which was if there is a young person in New Zealand that has gone through training and education but does not have an offer of employment that they're able to take up, what is the government's solution to situations in such as that? Are they going to take up some more training? Is there incentives by the government? Is there any action or plan in place for young people who have gone through training but have not managed to secure a job like the 19,000 over the past 12 months?
I did answer that, Mr Chair. I answered that very clearly. Further educational training, infrastructure investments bringing 240,000 additional jobs and parental responsibility.
Māori Amino Kapakingi.
Thank you, Minister. Sticking with the tightening eligibility 1819 piece, if I could. Now that the budget 2025 forecasts over $325 million in savings by restricting benefit access to 18-19-year-olds, how will this, and I've got a couple of subs after this, Mr Chair, how will the government justify this cut when it disproportionately affects rangatahi Māori, over 4,500 of whom currently receive the support? Can the Minister provide an update on the development of the parental assistance test and whether Māori advisors or youth advocates, just other Māori smart people like me, have been involved in its design to ensure cultural appropriateness? Will the Minister confirm whether young people will be denied support if their parents refuse to complete the parental test, and how does this protect the rights and well-being of vulnerable rangatahi? And final question, if I may, Mr Chair. What safeguards are in place for rangatahi escaping unsafe or unsupported home environments where parental means cannot or should not be tested? Thank you.
Mr Chair.
Honourable Minister.
As I said in answer to one of the previous members' questions, more detail will be available on that shortly. Some of those issues are exactly what is being considered in the detailed policy assessment. Let me just say again, this policy is about ensuring 18 and 19-year-olds are in further education, training or study or employment. What we do know, and I know that members opposite would be deeply concerned when we quote these figures, for a young person to go on to a benefit under the age of 25, they spend 18 future years of their life on welfare. None of us want that. So we are looking at new interventions to reinforce an expectation that actually most people in this House would have been raised with, that when you come out of your secondary schooling education, further training, a job. And that's the expectation our side of the House wants to set. We are aspirational for young people, we're aspiration for young Māori, and we want them to have a life of opportunity and choice, not one trapped on welfare.
Honourable Willie Jackson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I just wanted to follow the member's line of questioning over there, because I think, with respect, the Minister's a bit vague in terms of her responses with regards to Māori employment and Māori unemployment. And I do want to know, was particularly when unemployment was on the rise and was dramatically rising for youth in Māori, we are still trying to get our heads around why she cut Māori trade training at budget 2025, Mr Chair. It's particularly given that Māori trade training, as we know, has been had significant impact, Mr Chair, in terms of young people right around the country. So it confuses me that something so successful was cut by this government, and that was something that was embedded, Mr Chair, in a couple of generations, actually, and I was able to bring that back when I was Minister, and so something so successful is cut by this government, and we've never really had any answers on that. I also want to say to the Minister today, is she able to break down for us Māori Pacifica over 65 youth people in their own home? Are we able to get some details in terms of those needing accommodation supplements? We seem to be lacking in detail, which would really help in terms of any overall plan from this government. And in terms of Māori again, can I ask the Minister, does she have any details in terms of Māori on a main benefit? How many are on a main benefit since she took over in this position?
Mr Chair.
Honourable Minister.
I would ask that member to ask his question again about the accommodation supplement, but let me answer the others first. So, as at the end of June, there were 406,100 people on main benefit. Of that, 148,539 are Māori. In terms of the increases over the last year, the total percentage was 6.6, for Māori 5.7. So the increases are lower, and that's why I made that comment before about under 18 to 24. In terms of the Māori trade training, we made the decision to end that. It was a program that was brought forward in terms of a response to COVID. As we have done in many instances, we have ended funding for things that were COVID related, and we clearly never saw the levels of unemployment, thank goodness, that were forecast at the time. What we have done is invested in the most intensive program that is available, that we know has the greatest success, that is case management. As I said, every 18 to 24-year-old will be in case management.
Honourable Willie Jackson.
Yes, well, that's very sad, Mr Chair, to hear that type of response in terms of Māori trade training. As I said, it was a program that was acclaimed by everyone, no matter what their political affiliations were. So I just want to come back to the question that the Minister asked, if she asked me to reframe that question. The question is, how many more people have needed the accommodation supplement since she took over? Can she break that down for us, Māori Pacifica over 65 youth people, over Māori Pacifica and over 65 in youth? Is there any numbers with regards to that? And while we're talking about Pacifica, does she have any numbers in terms of Pacifica on job seekers since she took over? It'd be good to get a response on that. But back to what I was saying on Māori trade training, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that this government has made.
Mr Chair.
Sorry.
It's a response on this.
It's a response here from Penny Simmons. Honourable Penny Simmons.
Thank you, Mr Chair. In response to the questions by the Honourable Willie Jackson regarding Māori trades training places, he will be pleased to know that in the tertiary education space we have increased the number of youth guarantee places by 175 places per year, where that wraparound support and additional
care of the students is absolutely imperative to the success of that training. So that 175 additional youth guarantee places is certainly most useful in that space.
Mr Chair.
Honourable Minister.
So in terms of the 18 to 24-year-olds, when they're in, if the option is either case management or contracted services, if they've got work obligations, which could be part-time or full-time, I'm happy to answer the question around accommodation supplement. I don't have that data on me. If you wouldn't mind, please putting that down in writing, we can get an answer to you.
Ricardo Menendez-March.
At a time of high inflation, more people sleeping rough, and frontline organisations talking about the struggle of the high cost of living, what we have seen since this budget is a record number of people, at least the only other highest number we've seen is in September 2024, being declined for assistance. In fact, in the latest quarter, on June 2025, under her watch and after this budget, we've seen the highest proportion of people on the benefit being declined for assistance for something like an advance. An advance is something that can help you sustain your rental, pay your bills, have enough clothing so that your children do not get sick. How does the minister justify seeing under her watch the highest proportion of people and applications being declined for assistance that is life-saving for many? Mr.
Chair. Ricardo Menendez-March.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following up on that, does the minister have any information on who is most disproportionately impacted by this record proportion of people being declined for assistance such as advances? And has she made any directives, received any feedback, or passed on any feedback to MSD on this issue? This is real because people on the ground are telling us that they're facing more declines for basic things that they need. And the data is clear that a greater proportion of applications is getting declined under her watch. What is the reason for that?
Mr. Chair, let me just go back and answer the question around Pacifica 18 to 24-year-olds on main benefit is 7,047. That was just to answer the Honourable Willie Jackson's question. In terms of advance payments, I have not made any directives to MSD around advance payments. You'll be clear in terms of, we are experiencing challenging economic times, and some of the measures that we have done in the Budget 25, for example, are to ensure that people aren't getting overpaid so that lends to a debt. One of the challenges with advance payments is it then creates further financial difficulties further down the line. But I want to assure the member I have issued no directive around advance payments.
Helen White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask the Minister a little bit more about what she said concerning youth. She talked about this group of people who are 18 years on the benefit. And what I wondered is if she would accept that that was not apples with apples, because what you had when that was the number was the entrenched unemployed group versus now when the reason you have such high youth unemployment is because there are no jobs out there, and these are the last people that will be employed because they have no job experience. Does she accept that this class of people is very different in that way, and this is the opportunity for them to get work if work is available? So the answer isn't just training, it's actually the availability of work. Also, I would like an answer to my question about what it is actually costing the country to have the giant blowout of people on job seekers benefit. I think that's a fair question. I'd also like an answer to the question about how much people get on job seeker, because I do not think that the public understand how little it is, and whether people can live off that amount that is there. I have appreciated the answer about the adjustments that are made on the basis of CPI, but my question wasn't that. Was it possible, was it actually something that was adjusted in terms of the things I mentioned? Car registration was one, the cost of food was another, and I think I had a third thing that was, the cost of energy, which is of course huge. So I think those are all questions that the New Zealand public would really like the answer to. I also want to know from the Minister, we talked about the government engineering this, and I mentioned this, engineering this unemployment because it wanted to restart or kickstart the economy as it saw by bringing wages down. The government changed the Reserve Bank mandate to exclude any concern for unemployment in its decisions, and I understood the logic of that to be that it would create lower wages in that situation, so lower wages were good for kickstarting the economy. Why does the government punish the very New Zealanders who are victims to a faulty strategy that when they become unemployed by the design, their very own design? They want them to be unemployed so there are more people in the workforce and the wages go down, and yet they are punishing them by sanctions and suggesting that 18-year-olds are somehow in some habitual way staying on the benefit for 18 years. Thank you.
Mr Chair.
Honourable Minister.
Sorry, I need to correct the figure that I gave the Honourable Willie Jackson. It was not main benefit, it was job seeker. Just going to the lifetime number of future years on benefit, because I think the House will be interested to know that in June 2017, for someone under the age of 25 who was on job seeker support, their future years was 12.2 years. It is now 18.2. 18.2. No, it's not continuous. It's someone who goes on and off. But hopefully your maths will tell you that 12.2 is a lot less than 18.2, which just happens to line up with the 6 years that Labor was in office. We are deeply concerned about young people being on the job seeker benefit, which is why we are fully unwilling to accept that 18 years is as good as it gets. That's why we are focused on very intensive programs like case management to support them, to have higher expectations for 18 and 19-year-olds, and to the member Helen White, CPI calculations are based on an average of household costs across a range of baskets. I'm not going to spend the time in the House listing them. That is why we index to CPI. The job seeker benefit for someone over the age of 25, the flat benefit is $361.32.
Honourable Ginny Anderson.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I'd just like to pick up from my questions before. I was asking the Minister specifically around the 19,000 fewer jobs for those young people and what was the government's solution to finding a place for them if there was no job there. And the Minister's answer was that her government was going to create 240,000 new jobs. Well, I would just like to understand from the Minister, how did she get that figure? So I understand from previous comments that the Prime Minister has made that that's over 4 years. So if she can just confirm that 240,000 new jobs that her government will deliver, how was that specific number arrived at? And if she's able to, what specific initiatives will produce those 240,000 jobs?
I'm not going to list the infrastructure projects that have been already quoted in this House around the creation of new jobs. One thing that's very different about the government we have today as opposed to the one that was outgoing in 2023 is we're clear that it's not the government creating the jobs, we create the conditions for the jobs to be created as opposed to the government creating them.
Ricardo Menendez-March.
Is it correct that it is not the case that the reason why there's been a greater proportion of declines for advances, that people would be put in a worse off financial situation, as she alluded to in her previous answer to me, and that it could instead be because of a changing culture at work and income due to increased anti-beneficiary rhetoric? I say this because the stats speaks for themselves. There's been an uptick of proportions of declines for things like advances. And her own answer to my questions in writing shows that it is not to do because people would put in a worse off situation, but for a range of other reasons. Does she think it is fair for a greater proportion of people to be declined assistance at a time of high cost of living pressures in frontline organisations talking about increasing homelessness?
Honourable Willie Jackson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, I just want to come into the sanctions area now because in terms of a cultural The culture, what communities are saying to us, that the culture sadly has changed tremendously given where we were a couple of years ago. So we've always had a sanction system, but obviously imposing sanctions, Mr. Chair, is difficult if children and whānau are involved. So I want to ask the Minister, in terms of the sanctions area, what reports has she had of the checks and balances to ensure that some of our tamariki have not been hurt by these sanctions? Is she following through with a lot of the reports that we're getting from whānau? How much have sanctions increased since she changed the sanctions regime, Mr. Chair? Because it's a very punitive strategy that this government have gone down. And how many of those families are ones with children who have been punished by the sanctions strategy? And has an increase in sanctions correlated, Mr. Chair, with a reduction in job seekers, which surely has to be the aim of any government? So this is an area, Mr. Chair, of vital importance to our communities who have suffered through this terrible sanctions strategy that this government is rolling out. So where are we right now? I ask the Minister if she could respond.
Mr. Chair.
Honourable Minister.
I'm proud of the fact that we have a much more active welfare system than when we took office. And that is for a range of reasons. One of the reasons is the traffic light system, and 98% of those receiving benefit are at green, which means they know their obligations and they're fulfilling them. And I think that's something we should all be really pleased about. 0.6% at orange and 1.1 or 1.2 at red. So the number of people who are actually under a sanction is incredibly small, which I think is great news. And the other great news, of course, is that we introduced non-financial sanctions for the very reason was a concern for a blunt financial sanction where there are children in the household. There will be a review after 12 months, and the next two non-financial sanctions don't come in until the 1st of October. That was very deliberate about giving MSD case managers more options to have a sanction that was more suitable and appropriate to that family.
Honourable Ginny Anderson.
Very much, Mr. Chair. Just going back down to that 240,000 new jobs, I am aware that the Minister has said that's going to come from a range of infrastructure projects, and she doesn't want to list them out. But I would still like to know how she arrived at the figure of 240,000 additional jobs. And I would also like to know is she using job growth based on population growth? Now, she may want to take some advice from officials, but the government must have undertaken some form of calculation to arrive at the figure of 240,000. I'm assuming they didn't just make that up. And if so, can she please explain, is she using job growth based on population growth to produce that figure of 240,000 more jobs?
Ricardo Menendez-March.
Minister, is it factually correct that disabled people will be disproportionately pushed into deeper hardship as a result of the changes that she has made when it comes to eligibility for accommodation supplement for people who have borders? And if it is correct that disabled people will be disproportionately put in hardship as this change, I don't think she's listening to the question, but if it is correct that disabled people will be disproportionately affected by this, what is her message to disabled people affected by this policy?
Helen White.
Does the Minister accept that there's real possibility that the increase in sanctions may have led to an increase in previous beneficiaries not having enough food and seeking help from food banks, and also may have led to an increase in beneficiaries becoming homeless? If so, what work has happened to track this correlation, and what advice has she been asked for or has she received about those issues?
Ricardo Menendez-March.
Just in the interest of the Minister addressing and answering my question, is it correct that disabled people are going to be disproportionately impacted due to the changes she has made to the eligibility? It's actually really hard to get to the Minister when she's talking to someone else, but is it correct that disabled people will be disproportionately impacted by the changes she has made to the eligibility of the Accommodation Supplement for people who have borders, and that disabled people will be pushed deeper into poverty as a result of these changes compared to other groups? And if so, what is her message to disabled people affected by these changes?
Honourable Willie Jackson.
I'm not sure if the Minister's answered my question, which is, has an increase in sanctions correlated with a reduction in job seekers? But further to that, many of our organisations particularly community organisations, have talked to us about a dramatic increase in homelessness and the use of food banks. So does the Minister accept that there's a real possibility that the increase in sanctions may have led to an increase in previous beneficiaries becoming homeless? It seems to be obvious as we go out there and see the results. Community organisations are responding to us. Can I also ask the Minister, in terms of some of those community organisations, is she working closely with those organisations right now? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Honourable Louise Upston.
So there's been a number of questions around sanctions. So I would repeat what I said about a very small number being under red, which is when a sanction applies. And it is really simple for someone to come off a sanction, and that's for them to recomply with their obligations. So just because somebody is at red, it doesn't mean it's a permanent state of things. They have options in terms of complying with their obligations. And I will say again in this House, because it tends to be misrepresented on a frequent occasion, no one is sanctioned for not getting a job. They are sanctioned if they are not fulfilling their work obligations, which are things like going to an interview, having a CV, fulfilling their appointments with MSD, and taking the necessary steps to look for, prepare for and find a job. The sanction isn't if they can't find a job. And I said before that the new traffic light regime will be reviewed after 12 months.
Helen White.
I still have not received an answer to the question about what the cost is of the blowout of 26,000 more New Zealanders not being in employment under the watch of this government. I would really like that, and I'd like the Minister to tell me whether she considers it a personal failure that those people are currently unemployed. I want to know from the Minister whether those people are ones she considers just have an attitude problem, or in fact they have been the result and fallout of an economic downturn, in which case what I would expect is that we would step up as a government and support them into work in a way that actually was manageable for them. So I want to know an answer to a question I asked right at the beginning, which is, does she think that people, our families, our working families often, who get accommodation supplement, and our unemployed families, where one or two of the breadwinners have lost their jobs since the government took hold of this economy and has been responsible for the way it has been run for quite some time now, are they actually able to pay the bills? Has she made an inquiry? Because I've asked about specific payments, not CPI, which we know is a flawed system and it doesn't quite manage to do that. Has she looked to make sure that those families can pay the bills? One of the things that the Minister has done is she has decided to review people on accommodation supplements and take away the bare amount that they were getting from borders. That was $100 a week from those very people who were trying to make ends meet. I would like to know whether she looked at that since and thought, well, the cost of butter is now about $8. Actually, it is, if you're very lucky, it's $8. Maybe I need to look at this in terms of whether they can actually make ends meet. I'd like an answer sincerely to those questions.
Madam Chair. Honourable Louise Upston.
I was hoping I wouldn't need to do this in the House because it's been said multiple times before. But let's just...
I still haven't heard it.
Okay, good. Excellent. So here's what happens. High levels of spending, excessive levels of spending, wasteful spending leads to high interest rates, high inflation, a recession
to get the numbers down.
and higher unemployment. So unfortunately, when we came in,
It's all someone else's
we came into a period where inflation was 7.2. We've managed to get it down to 2.5, which is remarkable in this short period of time. So if the member's worried about the price of butter, she should worry about inflation and be celebrating the fact that it's down from 7.2 to 2.5. In terms of the unemployment rate forecast by Treasury for the previous government, I think it was June 2022, was expecting to be at 5.2 at this time. Guess what it is? 5.2. So we are not further away from what the unemployment rate was expected to be when that member's party were in government. But unfortunately, I mean, anyone on this side of the House would prefer not to be dealing with the circumstance we're dealing with. We have got inflation under control, but for, I think it's something like 44% of mortgage holders, they are yet to refix their mortgage. They are not seeing that falling interest rates in their bank account yet. That is still to come. And so we know that there is a lag period between inflation coming down, interest rates coming down, the economy turning and recovery beginning. Unfortunately, the unemployment rate is always the last to follow. And so the member asked specifically, what are we spending? What is the taxpayer bill for those on the job seeker benefit for 25-26, $4.6 billion. But actually, I'm less worried about the fiscal cost, I'm worried about the human cost. And that is why our side has set an ambitious target to reduce the number of people on the job seeker benefit by 50,000 by 2030. And yes, we could have said, let's have a really pathetic target because we have inherited an economic recession, we've inherited challenging times and given up and gone home. No, because for every single one of those people that come off welfare and into work, we know what a difference it makes for them and their families. I'm celebrating 80,700 people in the last year coming off welfare and into work, despite the train wreck of economic conditions that we have inherited. So $4.8 billion.
Ricardo Menendez-March.
I will ask once again, is it correct that disabled people are disproportionately affected by the changes she has introduced that will strip away income for people who have borders? And if so, what is her message to disabled people living in poverty who will be disproportionately affected by this change?
The changes that we have made around the accommodation supplement, going back to budget 24, were to make a fairer, more equitable system. So if you're a disabled person who has borders, yes, it will affect you. If you are a disabled person who is a taxpayer, you want a fairer, more equitable system. And also, if you're a disabled person who sees benefit of the accommodation supplement boundaries and rates changes, you'll be celebrating.
Honourable Willie Jackson.
Yeah, I think just because the government's come in under forecast doesn't mean at all that the government has been successful in terms of their employment strategy, Madam Chair. In fact, it's been a disaster for this government. We're seeing record numbers go to Australia. And the question again is, where is the employment strategy in terms of this government? We don't see one. All we see and hear is that you have come in under what was forecast with the previous Labor government, Madam Chair. That is not an employment strategy. It is just a continual waffle about the previous government. So I ask the question, is the closing of major work sites such as Kinleith and now East Valley Sawmill indicative of the government doing enough to tackle unemployment? What is the strategy, Madam Chair? Where is the investment? And has the Ministry of Social Development accounted for a potential increase in demand for its work programs in areas where major work sites are expected to close? Is there something that we can expect from the Minister other than her continually saying we have come under forecast and that forecast was forecast for the previous government?
Madam Chair.
Honourable Louise Upston.
We have published an employment investment strategy, which the member is asking about, an employment strategy for 2025 through to 2028. That is very much focused on a range of things, the priority around 18 to 24-year-old, so that we can move that curve back from the 18.2 years average future time on benefit that we have inherited, back to the 12.2 years, for example, that what it was where it was in 2017. Part of the investment strategy is the 490 case managers, because we know that one-on-one case management is the most effective intervention we have had. That is through data and evidence that tells us which programs are more successful. So we are investing in what works the best. Other initiatives like Mana and Mahi, Hei Tama Rangatahi, Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, Ngā Pukinga, are all about focusing how do we ensure that we are targeting those programs to people who will have the greatest impact. So I'd invite the member to read that employment investment strategy, and if he has questions on it, to put them down in writing.
Honourable Ginny Anderson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm going to have a third go at asking the Minister. She's promised that her government will create 240,000 new jobs. Could she please confirm how that number was calculated? And if so, is she using job growth based on population growth to arrive at the number of 240,000 new jobs that she has promised?
Honourable Louise
Madam Chair,
Upston.
well, from Budget 2025, it was Treasury's forecast at that time that there would be job growth of 2.7%, 240,000 jobs.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Honourable Ginny
So can she confirm that that calculation that she's referred to by Treasury is actually job growth based on population growth, not any specific action that her government has taken?
I would invite that member to ask Treasury. It's Treasury's forecast.
So, Madam Chair, again, so is the Minister of Social Development telling me that she does not know herself, as the Minister responsible, how her government is going to deliver 240,000 more jobs, and she does not know how that figure was calculated?
Madam Chair, I'll correct the member because I've already said it in this House. The government is very different from the previous one in terms of who they believe creates the jobs. Businesses create jobs. So if I think about the announcement today with Qantas and Jetstar adding 660,000 additional seats across the Tasman and within New Zealand, that creates jobs. The government is creating the conditions that businesses will grow and create more jobs. In terms of additional jobs that have been mentioned in this House, the member referred to the Prime Minister. I'd also refer to the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Infrastructure. The significant projects that kick off in the next 6 months will create more jobs.
Last question in this section, Helen White.
Thank you. And it is really for a question that I have asked and I have not had an answer for. And I think it's a central one. 29,000 more, or 26,000 more people are unemployed than they were under our government. And while the Minister gave me figures for what it cost the country this year, she did not give me the answer to the question, which is what is the difference in cost between what it cost under a Labour government when we had less unemployment and the cost that it is now, because we have 76,000 people that are unemployed and having to receive that money. What is the extra cost to our country, let alone the cost of the mental health of those people, etc., etc., etc. Thank you.
Madam Chair, as I said, we now are forecasting in the 25-26 and the appropriation documents $4.6 billion on the job seeker benefit. And that member likes to, wants to ask a question about comparing a cost to 2023. I've gone through the figures, I've explained how we get to this point in terms of the economic cycle, and she seems to have missed the point. that we have come in at a time where high spending, high interest rates, high inflation lead to economic recession and the harshest economic times that we've had since the 90s, and the follow is higher levels of unemployment. That is why our government has set a target to reduce the number of people on the unemployment benefit by 50,000. We will push through these challenging economic times with our Going for Growth strategy that is all about not just the fiscal cost, the human cost. And the human cost that I am Minister is unwilling to tolerate is that someone under 25 will spend another 18 years of their life on welfare.
Members, the Minister's time in the chair has come to an end. We now